In the quiet dust of Roswell, New Mexico, a girl grew up watching chaos bloom behind closed doors. Demi Moore's beginnings weren't built for Hollywood dreams, yet somewhere between a fractured childhood and the flicker of soap opera lights, she began crafting a life both extraordinary and deeply fragile. Her rise was fast, threaded through Brat Pack fame and cemented by Ghost, a film that left audiences breathless. But alongside the spotlight came shadows, roles that demanded more than just performance, and moments in history that would challenge what the world expected of a woman in control. When she posed, 7 months pregnant on the cover of Vanity Fair, the world looked and judged. She became an icon and a battleground, praised and pulled apart in equal measure. Her choices, unapologetic and bold, echoed louder than her critics. But success never told the whole story. Behind every red carpet moment, there were quiet, painful truths. Love came with weight. Image came with pressure. And through it all, Demi kept walking forward, even when the ground felt uncertain. Because sometimes, the applause doesn't silence the ache. And sometimes, fame just makes the silence harder to hold. There were smiles. And tears. A marriage to Bruce Willis, children, laughter in the chaos. Then an ending that left spaces where promises used to be. Then came Ashton Kutcher. Younger, wide-eyed. Full of promise. Their love was public, hopeful, and soon unraveling. Moore's story, already layered with scars, found new ones in unexpected places. The pressures of age, image, and expectation pressed in harder than ever. What began as a new chapter twisted into a quiet unraveling. Seizures, relapse, hospital lights flickering in place of camera flashes. The headlines told part of it. But the deeper truth, the exhaustion, the effort, the endless trying, that lived in the silence between interviews. Her body became a battleground. Her past, a mirror too sharp to hold. And yet, even in those hardest moments, there was something else, resilience. Not loud. Not glamorous. But steady, and quietly honest. It ended, yes, but not without meaning. She had climbed so far, only to find that fame does not shield anyone from pain. After the cultural explosion of Ghost, Demi Moore stood at the pinnacle of stardom, her name synonymous with strength and allure. But the applause faded quickly, and the same industry that celebrated her soon circled in judgment. The $12.5 million paycheck for striptease set records and targets. When the film faltered, so did the perception of her power. Critics sharpened their words. Audiences turned cold. And yet, Moore pressed on. In G.I. Jane, she shaved her head and bared her soul, seeking not just reinvention, but validation. The reaction was mixed. Praise clashed with mockery, resilience met with resistance. She gave everything to the roles, but Hollywood rarely returns the same devotion. Somewhere in the fight to stay relevant, Moore began to fracture inside. Fame became a fragile mask. And while the world watched her rise and stumble, few truly saw the weight she carried. Her personal life mirrored that descent. With Bruce Willis, there had been laughter, love, and the calm of shared family life. Their divorce came quietly, but the grief was deepened by the passing of Moore's mother. An ache layered atop so many others. Then came Ashton Kutcher. Their relationship, bold in its age difference, captured the world's attention. What looked like romance soon became something else entirely. Public eyes never turned away, and neither did the pressure. Moore, trying to hold her own against time and scrutiny, began slipping behind the scenes. Producers had once demanded she lose weight for roles. Now the demands echoed inside her, reshaping her self-worth. She tried to be everything. Partner, mother, star. But somewhere beneath it all, she began to disappear. Substance use, once behind her, crept back in. And when it did, the consequences were immediate and public. A health crisis in 2012 painted a sobering picture. A seizure brought on by synthetic marijuana and nitrous oxide put her in the hospital, and in headlines. Her body, overworked and undernourished, could no longer bear the weight of hiding. The woman once seen as invincible was now caught in a moment of undeniable vulnerability. The image shattered. The silence broke. But not everything was collapse. Amid the turmoil, she reached for meaning. Alongside Kutcher, she co-founded Thorn, an initiative to combat child exploitation. A rare moment of clarity in a storm of confusion. Even as her marriage unraveled, Moore sought purpose. Her activism was quiet but intentional, another way of trying to regain control. Yet the relationship continued to erode. The smiles thinned. The connection strained. And the story behind closed doors grew darker still. In her memoir, Inside Out, Moore finally gave voice to what had been unspoken for so long. She wrote of betrayal, of compromises that left her hollow. The threesomes she agreed to, acts she believed might preserve love, only left her further from herself. Kutcher's infidelity deepened the wound. Her sobriety, hard-earned and lasting for nearly 20 years, broke under the weight of disappointment. She relapsed. The spiral felt familiar, but the stakes were different now. She wasn't just grieving a partner. She was mourning the parts of herself she had given away. The world saw the unraveling. But in her words, there was also clarity. There was no need for vengeance, only understanding. The story wasn't tidy. There were no clean breaks. Just moments, raw and human, where someone tried and hurt and kept going anyway. Demi Moore had already lived through public rise and private unraveling, but the storm wasn't over. The years with Ashton Kutcher had left invisible scars, ones that didn't fade when the cameras turned away. What appeared to be a second chance at love had become a slow erosion of trust, self-worth, and sobriety. In Inside Out, Moore revealed the hidden fractures of that relationship with an unflinching honesty. She described moments not of partnership, but of performance, agreeing to threesomes not from desire, but from a desperate hope to keep his affection. Each compromise left her further from herself, and the more she gave, the less she recognized the person she had become. The betrayal didn't always wear a dramatic face. It crept in quietly, through absence, through secrecy, through emotional distance wrapped in a smiling facade. And when Kutcher cheated, the final thread snapped. The rupture wasn't sudden. It had been building. Yet when it broke, it brought with it a rush of grief Moore had been holding back for years. Her nearly 2 decades of sobriety ended not with one decision, but with the weight of many. Her relapse came like a collapse. Years of pressure finally giving way. The emotional toll, long buried beneath roles and public smiles, surfaced with a vengeance. Substance use returned, not as rebellion, but as numbness. The damage ran deeper than career fallout or bad press. Her sense of self had cracked under the strain of trying to preserve something already gone. And as the media dissected her appearance, her choices, her failures, Moore found herself caught in a storm of judgment. There was no room for grace in those headlines. No space for nuance. She wasn't just a woman grieving a marriage. She was the spectacle of it. The hospitalization in 2012 marked a breaking point. Not just of body, but of silence. It was as if her pain had become too loud to keep inside, too urgent to mask with another smile. What the public saw was the collapse. But what they missed was the endurance. Even in her worst moments, Moore remained someone who faced pain head-on, even when it nearly swallowed her. As Demi's world shifted, so did Kutcher's, but in ways that offered no relief. While Moore was writing the truth of her pain, Kutcher was building a new image. From TV actor to tech investor, he seemed to step into a different role entirely. Businessman, philanthropist, advocate. He had left behind the sitcoms and the scandals for boardrooms and non-profit stages. His involvement with Thorne stood as a symbol of this transformation. Serious, focused, and socially conscious. But the image could not erase the past. Controversies surfaced that chipped away at the polished persona. His old prank show, Punk'd, took on a darker tone in hindsight, with inappropriate comments about underage female celebrities resurfacing in the harsh light of modern awareness. Then came the poorly received LinkedIn post on gender dynamics. A misstep that drew criticism not for malice, but for tone deafness. These weren't just miscommunications. They were signs of a man still learning how to reconcile his past with his present, and the gaps that remained. The fracture widened in 2023. When Kutcher wrote a letter defending Danny Masterson, convicted of sexual assault, the consequences were swift. Public backlash didn't just question his judgment. It struck at the heart of his credibility. His resignation from Thorne's board followed. So did the apologies. But reputations, once shaken, don't settle easily. For someone who had once championed protection for the vulnerable, the contradiction hit hard. It wasn't the end of a career, but it was the unraveling of a carefully built second act. In contrast to Moore's raw honesty, Kutcher's silence on Moore's memoir spoke volumes. He expressed anger, yes, but chose not to publicly challenge her version of events. The rift between them remained, shaped by different paths through the same shared past. Where one chose exposure, the other chose retreat. Their stories, once intertwined, now sat side by side. Parallel but distant. And as both continued forward, the legacy of that relationship lingered like a shadow that neither fully escaped. Demi Moore's story didn't end in the wreckage. It moved through it. After the collapse, there was still breath, still movement, still the quiet task of rebuilding. Her memoir, Inside Out, didn't seek revenge. It sought clarity. And in those pages, she reclaimed the parts of herself that had been lost or taken. She didn't rewrite history. She told it. And in doing so, she let others see what it means to survive. Not glamorously, not triumphantly, but honestly. The rawness of her voice revealed the cost of love given too freely, of silence kept too long. There was strength in her vulnerability, even if it came late. She stood not as a symbol, but as a person. Changed, complicated, still standing. And that quiet endurance became its own kind of power. Her Golden Globe win for The Substance didn't erase what came before, but it marked a return. Not to the same spotlight, but to herself. There was beauty in that. Not in what she had gained, but in what she had faced. Ashton Kutcher's journey continued down a more conflicted path. His pivot to tech and activism shaped a new identity, one built on platforms, investments, and cause-driven work. But the foundation cracked under pressure. His public image, once evolving with steady intent, took blows that revealed contradictions. The letter of support for Danny Masterson wasn't just a misstep. It pulled open a deeper unease about trust, loyalty, and accountability. His resignation from Thorne's board marked more than a professional decision. It reflected a shift in perception of him and of the roles he had chosen to play. Kutcher didn't offer a long explanation. His public response remained measured, even as the fallout deepened. In some ways, it echoed his earlier choices during the breakup. Controlled, careful, almost distant. The silence between Moore and Kutcher, both during their marriage and after, lingered like unfinished dialogue. And though the words may never come, the space itself speaks. Their relationship had once captivated the world. An unusual pairing marked by charm, headlines, and quiet tension underneath. Now, with time stretched between them, the weight of that history rests differently. It isn't just a story of fame or failure. It's a portrait of how deeply two lives can shape, harm, and change one another. The love that once lit up red carpets gave way to silence and distance, but not emptiness. In its place, there was reflection. There were pieces picked up. Both Demi and Ashton emerged from their shared years carrying scars, but also carrying growth. And even in that, their stories remain intertwined. Not as lovers, not even as friends, but as two people who weathered the same storm from different shores. Some wounds closed. Others didn't. And yet, there's meaning in the survival alone. There were smiles. And tears. There was pain that went unseen, and strength that refused to be loud. Sometimes, goodbye comes with gratitude. Not because it was easy, but because even endings can hold grace. Moore's path, though jagged, found room again for art, for voice, for quiet impact. Kutcher's, though uncertain, still winds through causes, companies, and the search for something meaningful. It ended, yes, but not without meaning. Their legacy isn't one of perfect romance or bitter fallout. It's something more human. A reflection of the ways we try, the ways we fall short, and the ways we keep going. In the space between their past and their present, there's no neat resolution. Only the enduring truth that even the most public love stories are, at their core, deeply private battles. And from those battles, something quieter than victory remains. Endurance, reflection, and the quiet echo of lessons learned.